The Toronto Blue Jays made another move yesterday, and it was Isiah Kiner-Falefa. Not the flashiest move, not the one that Jays fans have been clamoring for, but there is a real reason behind it, and we believe that a trade could be following. So we'll break that down and much more in this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. Now, before we get into this video, we want to let you know that it is sponsored by Rentals.ca. Rentals.ca has been a huge supporter of the channel, but if you didn't know, Rentals.ca is Canada's largest apartment hunting network. And Jays fans have been asking for moves. We've been clamoring for them all off season long. They're finally starting to trickle in here, but it's time for a big move. And if it's time for a big move in your own personal life, use rentals.ca because they're available coast to coast. Their website is super clean, super easy to use, and they make that big transition a lot smoother for you. So if you need to make a big move in your life, use rentals.ca. They're simply the best.
Yeah, and both of us have had personal experiences with it, so check it out in the pinned comment and the description as well. And thank you to Rentals.ca for sponsoring this one. Now, Peter, we have a lot to get into today, specifically regarding Isiah Kiner-Falefa. We've had a day to kind of marinate this signing, and it's seemingly that there's a kind of a consensus as to why this move happened. Obviously, yesterday we know that that's Kevin Kiermaier, but that we know that they signed, obviously, Isiah Kiner-Falefa. And there's some reports coming out that they fully expect to maybe trade Espinal now. We've had Thomas Hall, we've had other reporters say that they've been exploring the Isiah Kiner-Falefa trade market, or the Espinal trade market, in light of signing Kiner-Falefa. What are your thoughts on a potential Espinal trade? Could he be going elsewhere? I don't know, but it seems like the real reason is that a trade could be coming, because if it's not coming, this move makes a lot less sense than we initially thought.
Yeah, well, I fully expect him to be traded. I don't know what his value is. I can't even begin to imagine that it's anything significant. But if you can get cash for him or even a low-level prospect, I think you take it just to make room for Isiah Kiner-Falefa to play. Because if we compare the two players, IKF is a much better defender. He can play more positions, and he's a much better base runner as well. Obviously, he doesn't hit well. Neither does Santiago Espinal. The one edge I will give to Espy is that he's a good hitter against lefties. IKF is just below average against both sides. So, look, it's a kind of a net negative when you look at the hitting perspective. But in defense and in terms of running, I think this is an upgrade when we're looking at one of the final position players on the roster. And ultimately, that's what Santiago Espinal would have been. He would have been probably the 25th or 26th guy to make the team. And he wouldn't be playing very much. He would be getting in there maybe twice, maybe 3 times a week if a guy's struggling or if a guy's hurt. But apart from that, not much of a role beyond that. So I like IKF in the role that Espinal would have played. But if IKF is like a full-time player or if he's playing 4 or 5 times a week, I'm not big on this. I do expect another move to be coming, whether it's a trade or a free agent acquisition. But this is definitely not the last we'll hear of Ross Atkins and company.
Yeah, and we saw, obviously, a couple days ago they signed Kiermaier, and last offseason, we thought the same thing, that Kiermaier may be the 4th outfielder, and ultimately he turned into a very valuable player. I don't know how to feel about the IKF signing. It's a little bit steep. A lot of fans out there think the price was steep at $15 million. Thomas Hall reported here that the Blue Jays have already discussed multiple trade scenarios involving Espinal. As I reported this winter, those talks are likely to continue in the weeks and months ahead. And I agree. Obviously, Espinal didn't get much run last season mainly because Whit Merrifield was playing all the way around. We look at this, and he didn't even qualify for much of the baseball and savant stuff. Probably had the worst season as a Blue Jay, putting up a .645 OPS. His defense even took a big hit last season as he was a below-average defender. You know what you're going to get from Isiah Kiner-Falefa. He is a very good third baseman. He won Gold Glove at third base, so at the very least, you're getting much more positional versatility compared to Espinal, and you're able to play an elite third base, which is something that Espinal was not able to do, and Espinal can't play the outfield either. So I think it's a hybrid of an Espinal replacement and a Whit Merrifield replacement, even though the offense is slightly worse than Merrifield. But I don't know. I'm starting to come around a little bit, but definitely an Espinal replacement. I would suspect a trade soon.
I think that's positive, though, when we're looking at trading two kind of players that didn't really fit anymore with the Blue Jays for one player that's going to take both of those roles on. I think that's a positive change in the right direction for the Blue Jays. And I know it's not saying much because the Yankees were god awful last year in terms of offense, but IKF was one of their best hitters down the stretch. Again, it's not saying much because he was still below average in that time, but DJ LeMahieu was underperforming at a criminal level. Aaron Judge wasn't getting any help around him whatsoever in that lineup, but IKF stepped up and he came up with some big moments for them. Ultimately, it wasn't enough to get them into the playoffs, but he was one of their more consistent performers down the stretch, and maybe he is a guy with some playoff experience. The Yankees have gone deeper more recently into the playoffs than the Blue Jays have, so maybe that's another check mark in the book, a guy who can add some experience and help out these young guys. He's only 29, but he's definitely been around the major leagues, and he knows his way around the business.
Yeah, and he's obviously been a very good fielder. And he down the stretch, if you ask Yankees fans, obviously he didn't have a great season, especially offensively. But when Judge was hurt, he did a lot of the heavy lifting. He made some changes to his plate approach, added a bit more power, albeit he still wasn't able to cross the 700 OPS mark. Now, Pierre, I want to ask you a question as what kind of trade, I know you kind of mentioned maybe just cash, but do you think Espinal has any value whatsoever? When you're looking at his stats, again, he had a very good All-Star 2021 season, but since then, he's been very, very, I would say, poor. I don't really know how else. Last season was a horrible thing for him. I think they're going to trade him. Do you have any potential packages? I'm curious to see people watching this video right now in the comment section. I don't know if it was an All-Star in 2021 or 2022. I think it was 2021, but what kind of package you would like to get for Santiago Espinal in a time where you're probably not going to get much, at least as much as you would have got a couple years ago?
Yeah, I don't think you'll get anything back that would help your current roster. So I'm just looking purely at cash or a mid-level prospect here to maybe just add some depth to your farm system. I don't think Espinal can fetch you a package that'll make your team better in any area of need. So I would kind of close the book on that sense. You're more so getting rid of him to open up room for Isiah Kiner-Falefa, and I think that's what the Blue Jays are going to look to do. Maybe you could have traded him last season or even in the middle of this past year to get something of value in return, but I think that ship has sailed. His ceiling is not high. You know what you're going to get out of him, and I know his defensive struggles were apparent last year, but I think that's kind of overblown. I think he's still a pretty solid defender wherever you put him, and he came up with some big-time hits later on in the year for the Blue Jays, but there's a cap to how much he can provide. He's not going to give you any power. He's going to give you average to good defense, and he's not a good runner either. He's a below-average runner as well. So it's not very intriguing for another team, and he showed what he can do as an everyday player, but he kind of dwindled. His performance dwindled as the season grew, and he just wasn't able to sustain that over 162 games. So I don't know how attractive he is to other teams that are looking to trade for him, but I just can't see them getting anything back that would blow the Blue Jays away.
Yeah, and I think ultimately Kiner-Falefa is a better version of Santiago Espinal, a higher floor version of Santiago Espinal, and I would also argue his ceiling is probably a little bit higher than Espinal as well. So I don't know. It's interesting to see what their next move is going to be. There's definitely more moves to come. We still yet to have a DH. We kind of have an outfielder, depending if you want to put Varsho in left field, but we don't know what that plans are. But any quick final thoughts before we wrap up? I think it was an okay move. Nothing too exciting though so far.
Look, if we continue the trend, we might get another move today. It's been 2 moves in 2 days now for the Blue Jays. Ross Atkins has been getting active. He's finally gone from his hiatus or his vacation, whatever you want to call it. But the Blue Jays have been active, and I expect some bigger moves to ensue after these couple of kind of minor moves. I want to see another outfielder get added. I want to see another DH get added. I just want to see some more movement here. I want to see the Blue Jays continuously improve here, and I think they have the ability to do that. And thank you once again to rentals.ca to wrap up here.
Yeah, check them out. And if you want to check out our video from yesterday, click on your screen now, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.